I'm taking on a burger challenge. Over 1,400 people have failed, which could really spell disaster for my quest to win every single challenge while on this Australian food challenge tour. And with these odds seemingly stacked against me, I really needed to be sure I was in prime food fighting shape. Thankfully, the challenge wasn't until later in the day, and I needed to make the journey to Canberra in the ACT, which stands for Australian Capital Territory. So at least I'd be getting plenty of activity in beforehand to help build up my appetite, especially when I'm lugging around that giant backpack of mine. While on my way to Canberra, there really wasn't too much of interest here, except for number 1, Randy's addiction does seem to have a contagion factor, as I could see it spreading to others nearby. Number 2, someone spray painted a sassy little drawing on the ground. Shame on them. After a 3-hour bus ride, we made it to Canberra. Then after a bit of a hike on foot, I finally arrived at the restaurant, known as the London Burgers and Beers.
Overall, feeling kind of, not really gross, but definitely feeling fat. Last time was the first night I did some reckless eating with that unnecessary burr shake, but it was so good.
And also had a bit of a food hangover from it too. Anyways, after making my way into the restaurant, like I always do, I started checking the place out. And I'll say, I was liking the overall design here. And I know I sound like a broken record because I feel like I say that all the time, but I always find it to be a fun experience when you walk into the restaurant for the first time, just to get a sense of the overall vibe of the place. Then after I settled in, there was only one thing left to do, and that was to get this food adventure started. Except I didn't. Minutes before my challenge was gonna be made, I came down with a bloody nose out of nowhere. The good news, however, is that I recovered and I was able to reschedule my attempt the very next day. So the following day, I came back, ready to fight this fearsome foe that had bested so many people before me. Let the battle begin, as I'm taking on the London Burgers and Beers London Lot Challenge, here in Canberra of the Australian Capital Territory, which also happens to be the capital city of Australia. Now with this challenge, you have 30 minutes to finish everything here, which includes 2 giant London Lot burgers, which dare I say have a lot going on with them. But really, these London Lot burgers are packed and are layered with 2 big old beefy burger patties topped with cheese and bacon. As a surprise twist, you got some beets in there, which I think might be a food challenge first for me, which I was definitely curious about. Then you've also got some pineapple, which you really don't see that too often on a burger either. But then there's also a few more, say, traditional items, like some leafy greens, tomatoes, and some of their specialty sauce. And apparently because those 2 big old London Lot burgers weren't enough, they add 2 big baskets of my oh so favorite item in all the food challenges, which are chips. Then to really top things off here, you also have to finish a full jug of beer, which in my case, I was able to choose a hard cider for my drink, which I'll talk about more later. All of that has to be finished within a 30-minute time limit. And if you're like the more than 99% of people who fail this challenge, you have to fork over 45 Australian dollars. But if you win, you get the meal for free and your picture up on their wall of fame. With only 30 minutes to finish this London Lot Burger Challenge, it's a ton of food, and not a whole lot of time to finish it. Even the big man himself, Randy Santel, only had seconds to spare when he tried it. And having that whole ordeal from last night, which the thought of having another occurrence, was still lingering in the back of my head. But I knew I had to focus in if I wanted to have any chance at beating this challenge and keeping my winning streak alive. After a few bites of these London Lot burgers, it was easy to tell these burgers, they were crafted with care and were certainly a sight to behold. But there's no way you're just fitting that whole burger into your mouth at once. It's just not happening. But breaking it down like I normally do during a challenge, it worked out quite alright, as I just grabbed a burger patty, took a few bites, then if needed, I could chase it with any number of toppings, especially with things like the pineapple, which would add a nice contrast and also change up the flavor. But I mean, even the burger patties by themselves, they were great. First off, you get those savory flavors from the beef and the melted cheese. Then you get the caramelized goodness from the grilled onions as they enter the mix. It was really a nice mix of flavors that were really treating my taste buds. Now with those beef patties taken care of, it's time to finish those more manageably sized veggie burgers. And my assumption here was that these were going to taste just fine, but actually, they were even better than I thought. That bun, it really sets the tone when you first bite into it, as it has that softer texture with that teensy bit of chewiness, and then it just sort of collapses down with each bite you take. Then I was getting a burst of flavor from the beets with its sweeter brine, and a little something something from the sauce, and even a little bit of texture with those greens. So yeah, absolutely wonderful. But while I would have fairly enjoyed taking more time to enjoy these London Lot burgers, I had less than half the time remaining, so I had to keep after it, especially since I knew I'd be having a whole lot of carbs in my future. Don't mind me here. I'll just be snapping up that egg here real quick. Done with the burgers, now on to the chips. And here's where the real challenge for me begins. I was hoping that I would have a little bit more time to work with here, but here we are, as I start making a fry ball, before I go to town and send it down. I'm sure by now you know just how much I love eating a ton of these easy and cheap to make yet oh so filling type of carbs, which if you couldn't tell that was complete sarcasm, but I will admit they weren't half bad. They were still warm, which helps out a ton here, but they also had a very light crisp on the outside and were on the softer side on the inside. Though after a fry ball or two, it just comes back to my saying, chips are chips. You might have asked yourself, Mitch, if you're short on time, why not start drinking some of your hard apple cider? That would be a good idea. And I actually did sneak in a few cheeky sips to start, but it just really wasn't to my liking. And as far as the actual hard cider goes, I don't know what the brand was. The restaurant just gave me a couple choices. And after hearing them list off one as a hard apple cider, I just stopped them there and said, you had me at apple. I'll go with that one. And to each their own. I'm just not very keen on any alcoholic beverages. But I knew this challenge wasn't going to be easy, so I was taking a gamble on that I would be enjoying the sweeter taste of the apple cider a whole lot more than any choice of beer. After finishing both baskets of chips, it was time to find out if my gamble would pay off. As I focused in, channeling those inner Wisconsin heritage roots, and summoning the powers of drinking that reside deep within me. Oh man, I don't know how I was able to do that, but I won't complain. That gamble, it really paid off. And right away, I could start feeling the consequences of my actions. With all that carbonation quickly expanding into my stomach, at least I can relish in the fact that with this victory, I would be joining the very few, the less than 1% of those who were able to take down this London Lot Burger Challenge. And to put the cherry on top, I was setting out to be the only person to ever beat this challenge and then follow it up with some post-challenge victory push-ups. And oh, it was a struggle, but I somehow managed to get through those too. And while I might have gained a few pounds here, I think I also lost a few screws in the old noggin here. Oh, come on, Mitch. Put that away. Nobody wants to see that. And with this food adventure finished, I faced another challenge of a different sort, making it back to our base of operations, which included scaling a bunch of stairs. And as I'm struggling to do so, if you want to watch more from this trip, tap the video on the screen or click one of the links in the description down below and I'll see you there.